This episode is brought to you by Jing's Mortgage Team. Jing's Mortgage Team is a team of real estate mortgage professionals whose mission is to help anyone with their real estate needs. If you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, refinance your home, have credit issues, or in need of an investment loan, we can definitely help you. If you're looking for a real estate agent, we know the best of the best real estate agents. Visit the link below for more information. Tommy, I deeply appreciate you coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. It's an honor, Tommy, for you to come on and peel the curtain back on Secret Sauce with Hamilton Lau. This is a very fascinating world to me, the world of competitive shooting. I'm so excited and look forward to understanding a little bit of your world.
Sure.
Because I'm always fascinated with all competitors. And I think all competitors have a similar mentality on many things, but it's just the conduit to competition is different.
Of course.
But again, thank you so much for coming
Oh,
on.
it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So Tommy for those of you who don't know, Tommy is a competitive shooter. He's been shooting for 22 years. Won state titles, right?
Yes.
I think, what year was this for the production shooting?
In 2020, number one production shooter in the state of New York.
Number one production shooter. And what's production production mean again?
There's production is one of the many divisions that USPSA has, and production is your basic pistol, no bells, no whistles, a limited of 10 rounds per magazine, factory gun, so. It's fun compared to other divisions that are out there, and I'm currently shooting another division right now, which is pistol caliber carbine.
Wow, what is that?
That's an AR-15 or a rifle style based firearm that shoots pistol caliber ammunition. So a rifle that shoots 9mm ammunition, and that's what I'm currently shooting right now.
Wow, that's amazing. Just again, it's just a fascinating world to me because you're competing at such a high level and you're not just a competitor, you're a champion competitor. So it's like, this is just, again, an honor, and I appreciate you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Sharing that little secret sauce. Because again, it's my podcast is really, again, a place to understand what makes successful people tick. So again,
Sure.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
So please tell us, how'd you get into competitive shooting?
How did I get into competitive shooting? It's funny. I would go to the shooting range, just your typical shooting down range, and I was quite good at it. I guess the Marine Corps taught me something well, right? And somebody says,
When did you get into the Marine?
I was in the Marines from '96 to 2000.
Wow.
And one of the guys recommended, it's like, have you ever done competitive shooting? I'm like, what's that? I've seen it on TV. That's about it. And he says, there's a place out in Long Island that does competitive shooting. I went out there to what is now my home range, and they were having what is called the Long Island Championship, which is their little championship at the end of the year. And they go all out having their championship matches. And I thought this is where their normal, typical day. So I go there. I was like, wow, this place is wonderful. It's like, a kid in a candy store for a person like myself. And I fell in love. I got hooked. And 22 years later, I'm still doing it. So what got me into it was some just random person at the shooting range recommending, competition. And I got in there and I fell in love. I got hit by the bug. Spent a lot of money getting all the guns I wanted to get, and doing all the training I needed to get to, at least be respectable in my scores, and then just kept progressing from there.
Wow. So what was it about that experience? I mean, you competed. I assume you competed at that event.
Yes, yes, I did, and I was quite embarrassing. It was very humbling. So, being that mentality that I have, I go to the guy that was, consistently beating me. I'm like, what military branch were you in? He's like, I'm just a plumber. I'm like, wow. Just anybody, is shooting and shooting at this high level. He's like, anybody who puts that time, dedication, effort, and energy can do, whatever they want. And that kind of like left an image on me. I'm like, I got to put more time, effort, and energy. And so my very first competition that I competed in was very humbling. I placed very low. And you had just random guys that were carpenters, plumbers, just, regular day job people that had this passion for this sport and were wonderful at it. So I'm like, well, I want to get to that level. And, with years of time, dedication, I got to that level.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I can envision and imagine the level of respect, to be at the top of the food chain, the level of respect, not just to have for the sport, but of course to the equipment that you're using and you're
sure.
competing with, right? Because it's not just, okay, I'm going to take a gun and shoot.
Right.
It's like, there's a lot to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I put a lot of time, effort into my firearms, taking care of them, cleaning them, maintaining them, and putting certain products in my firearm to keep them performing the way they should be performing. And I guess the biggest compliment I get is when I have people who I don't even know come up to me and says, I got very close to your score, which means a lot because I look up to you. And I was like, I don't consider myself an idol. I just consider myself a normal guy that just shoots guns very well. And the biggest compliment I get is, when I have these people looking up to me and aspire to be where I am in my life. And that means a lot, because I would have never thought anybody would be aspiring to be me or to reach my level. And then I look back at all the years that I've competed, and I'm like, I've done pretty well for myself. So it's a humbling experience that people actually look up to me in that aspect.
Yeah, I think that it's just part of human nature to
Yeah,
be inspired by people that are just, again, top, on the top of the
sure,
echelon, right? Like that has that champion mentality, because you can translate competitor, in any competition,
sure,
you can translate that to whether it be a personal goal or a personal obstacle that you're trying to overcome, right?
absolutely.
And I can only envision and imagine, all the obstacles that you had to face,
I did.
both competitively and personally while
Sure.
trying to, get to the top, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was born, which a lot of people are born. It's not a deficiency. I'm right-handed with my left eye being a dominant eye. And for a shooter, it's a disadvantage because your right hand and your right eye should be on the same platform so you can acquire your sights better and reach your target quicker. And that was my first biggest trial and tribulation in competition is, wow, I'm right-handed, left eye dominant. What do I do about this?
So just, I guess it would be like if I'm holding a rifle,
Right.
like normally I would just kind of tilt my head to the right if I'm holding the
And
rifle to
and,
my
and
right.
quite a few
And
people do that.
that's
Well, they kind of,
the standard,
yeah.
right? But for you, it doesn't.
It
I
doesn't
guess
line up.
It doesn't
Like
line up right
my
for you.
dominant eye is my left eye, so my left eye is looking at just random nothingness, where my right eye is looking through the scope or through a sight.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
That's a huge disadvantage.
it is.
So in the beginning, I guess it's like, how do you,
How do I like
are you,
what
are you
eye do I go for?
overcompensating, like, to your
Yeah,
left?
I actually for a couple of years, just because I didn't know any better, I just forced my left eye closed. I closed my dominant eye and let my right eye do all the work, which closes your radius of vision. Because you have peripheral visions on both ends, and when you're shooting a competition like I do, it's running through an obstacle course while shooting a gun, reloading and acquiring targets on the move. Closing one eye, you're closing a lot of your peripheral vision running through an obstacle course, which is a disadvantage. So I did a lot of training. I've trained with some phenomenal instructors, and they taught me the way on overcoming one of those difficulties that I had, which was
Interesting.
yeah,
So you were able to find, those kind of mentors that
absolutely,
kind of
yes,
understand what you're going through. That's fascinating. Like,
yes,
that's again, I can imagine it's a huge disadvantage.
it is.
And they were able to,
Yeah,
plant
I mean,
seeds
I
and
think
guide you.
having a disability or a problem, admitting you have a problem, and finding someone that can help you with that problem is step one. Because a lot of people don't want to admit they have a problem or they're not good at something, and seeking help is another problem that people have. Well, I don't need an instructor. I could do it myself. And no, you know, get the help from a professional that has been doing it for years. And I was very fortunate that I went to some phenomenal instructors, and I've learned from them as a competitor. I've learned from them as a firearm instructor myself. So, you know, having people that have been doing this longer and have reached the top performance level of the shooting world, you know, you listen to what they say, you know. And so humbling myself and saying I need to get the help that I need made me a better shooter.
Wow, and I think that's consistent with a lot of the people that I have on the show. Uh, it's like a secret sauce, not the secret sauce, but
Right.
a secret sauce. Just being humble and
Yes.
just acknowledging that, hey, you do potentially need the help, and
Sure.
being open minded to be willing to do that. So, would you say that that's the foundation to help lead you to
Oh,
where you
100%.
are?
Yeah,
Being
absolutely.
humble.
Yes. And knowing that, you know, you need to ask for help, and you know that let your pride aside and learn, you know. And I don't want to call this sport a male dominated sport, because there's a lot of phenomenal women that are shooting in the sport, my goddaughter being one of them.
Nice.
And she's actually the top female shooter for the state of New York. So
Wow, what's her
you know,
name?
Anastasia Georgiopoulos.
Okay.
Just
Look her up, follow her.
Yes, Anastasia shoots.
I'll put her link in the
Thank you.
description. Yes.
But the male, you know, pride of not asking for help gets in the way. And you know, and it doesn't even have to be male pride. Just pride alone gets in the way. So if you put that pride aside and get, you know, seek that help, and you know, learn from people that you know have reached that level, you know, with certain guidance and listening, you can practice enough to get to that level yourself.
Yeah, and if again, if you're fortunate enough to find somebody that's willing to even share information,
Yes.
you know, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
also.
and these are really like top level competitive shooters. There's one guy that is a phenomenal shooter. His name is JJ Racaza, and he's also a firearms instructor. And I've learned so much from him, and he's helped me out a lot in my career. You know, being where I am. So, thank you, JJ. I appreciate it.
Shout out JJ.
Yes.
So, as far as competition, you know, what are some of the things that you do to prepare for competition?
It depends. It also depends on the competition itself. For example, the last competition that I had was the Mid Atlantic, and they give us stage briefings, which is pretty much a loose layout of what the stage per stage is going to look like. And I saw that there were a lot of low window ports that we had to shoot from. I'm a 6'3", 285-pound guy, so going really low to shoot a gun is not something I typically do. So I was like, okay, well, now I have to work out on my squats and getting low, and then leaving into another position from that low position. Or if I see in the stage briefing, there's not so common starts. Unloaded gun and first magazine on the table. Not typically how you start. You start with a gun loaded and holstered if it's a handgun, or loaded and in your hands if it's a rifle. So having a gun on the table unloaded is not something that I typically start with. So I would practice with an unloaded gun on the table. So what I would do is, it's called dry firing, and I practice with no ammunition in the room, and will continue to do repetitions until I feel comfortable and confident enough in that skill of, you know, picking up that gun and loading it as quickly as possible, because everything is under the timer.
I see. So, like, as part of your preparation, you identify exactly what the stage is going to be,
Right.
what the obstacles are going to be,
Correct.
and you kind of plan your training around
Around that.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
How far in advance do you get the information of the stage?
It depends on the match director. Some match directors will give it to you with very limited notice and give it to you within a week of the match. Some match directors give it to you months in advance. And it's not always exactly per se the exact blueprint that they give you, but you get the gist of how the match is going to be. So if there's unconventional things, I will practice on that. Also, depending on the season, if it's a summer competition, I will prepare myself by hydrating a lot, a week in advance, because you can get dehydrated, and you know your mental capabilities diminish, your physical capabilities diminish. So it's not only just the shooting. It's hydration, mental.
Hence the sport aspect
Yes,
of this,
yes.
right? Because as you were mentioning before, if the stage requires a lot of low type of shooting,
Sure.
you're gonna need very strong quads.
Yes.
You're gonna have to work on your squats because it's all, as you were mentioning, it's all under the timer.
Yes.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
What would you say was the shortest turnaround time? Like, say, like I'm just making this up. Let's like a week. Like that they gave you to prepare for a stage. Like, was it like a week or a day or two?
It was a 3-day notice.
3-day notice.
3 days. And,
Would you mind sharing what was that experience like?
yeah, well, they
what
wanted
happened?
they wanted to keep a lot of things under wraps and be more of a surprise, and they just gave us 3 days notice on the stage briefings, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be challenging, And there was quite a few things that were unconventional in typical
what?
shooting competitions, like a shaky bridge. It's literally a bridge that is connected onto chains. So when you step onto the platform, it just shakes. There's no stable platform. I'm like, really? I can't practice this at home. Like, I'm not building a shaky bridge in my backyard to practice this. So some of the things you can't practice for. There was this one time that the stage was a big seesaw. So you stepped on a platform that was a bridge that was on a tipping seesaw. So you're holding a firearm, you're shooting at targets, and you're running onto a seesaw platform that will then just drop once you get over that pivoting point of the seesaw. I've never practiced on a seesaw. Like, that's not something I've ever done. So they had their challenges, and it's fun. That's what I love about it. It's not a single day that I've been to any competition has ever been the same as the previous one. So it's always something different. It's always something fun. It always keeps it exciting. So you can never get bored at a USPSA match.
Wow, it sounds so cool.
It is. It is.
Like, I could imagine, jumping over a wall.
Yeah.
And like doing like
A somersault.
A somersault and like shooting for real.
Well,
they have stuff
you
like
know what
that.
it is? It's the most realistic training for military law enforcement that you can have. Your heart races because you're under the timer, the stress of the timer, and wanting to do good, and running through this obstacle course. There's good guys and bad guys. So there is targets that you're not allowed to shoot because that's a good guy. You get penalized if you shoot a good guy. Then there's activators that activate a swinging target and plate racks that kind of weeble wobble when you shoot them and move around. There's a Texas Star that literally rotates every time you shoot it. So it's very challenging, but a lot of fun.
That's what I was going to say. It sounds incredibly
Yeah.
fun. Like, the only thing that I can imagine, because I've never done this before, the only thing I can imagine is like, when I was, playing on the computer, like first person shooters, like, that's like the closest thing, but this is like real life.
This is real life. Exactly
awesome.
in that sense. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a lot of fun. I mean, I highly recommend anybody that has a thought of doing it or an interest of doing it. The best advice I could give them is literally just come out and do it. Everything's going to be a learning experience. You're going to be taught the rules and regulations in the beginning, so you don't break any rules and regulations. Then it's going to be a humbling experience because even though you're a good shooter, for example, at the shooting range, this is something new. You've never shot and ran through an obstacle course before, so you might not do as good as a person who's been competing for years. And just come out and do it, is the best advice I could tell somebody. It's don't get scared. Everybody, wins, loses, or disqualifies from a match. It happens. But you not coming out to a match just prolongs you having that much fun.
Right. And even preventing you from growing, right?
Yes,
like
and learning.
In general,
yeah,
exactly. So your practice routine, would it be like, do you have a set practice routine that you always do, or is it based out of
there is, other than those stage briefings that I prepare for a major match, it's a dry fire routine that I will typically do. I allot myself 20 minutes a day, every single day, to dry fire. Unholstering a gun if it's a pistol, or acquiring my sights if it's a rifle competition, practicing on my reloads.
When you say unholstering a gun, you mean the gun
Unholstering,
is in the
from
and
the
then
holster.
you just like quickly take it out type of
Yes,
thing?
because everything is on the
that's so
timer.
cool.
Yeah, so it's like, once you are given the make ready command, you put the first magazine in, you rack your gun, you put it in your holster. The next time you hear an audible beep, that's go time. That's when the timer starts. So when the beep goes off, you have to unholster and get your shots in as quickly as possible because it's speed versus accuracy. It's I want to be accurate, but I want to be as quick to complete that course of fire as quick as possible in the most accurate way possible to get the most amount of points. And everything is on a timer. So the second that beep goes off, you unholstering and getting your first shot is on a timer. If your gun jams or malfunctions, it's on a timer, unfortunately. So
Wow.
everything until your last shot in that competition is on the timer.
Has that ever happened to you where your gun
Oh,
jams?
of course, yeah. I
What do you
mean,
do?
when you clear the jam as quickly as you possibly can, and that comes through training as well. A few instructors that I've had taught me just strictly clearing a jam. Multiple platforms, rifle, handgun, shotgun, and doing it as quickly as you possibly can because not even in competition seconds count, but fractions of seconds is what can win or lose a competition
Especially at like
at that
championship
level.
level.
Yeah, and you'll see hundredths of a second, where somebody won or lost first place. So if you can clear that jam or malfunction as quickly as you possibly can, that is just that much quicker that you'll be back into the competition and finishing that course of fire. So yeah, I've had jams, I've had malfunctions. You overcome them as quickly as you possibly can, and that relies back on your training.
Right? And you allot time specifically to, stimulate that scenario
Oh,
with the
sure.
jams.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Okay.
things that I do as a firearm instructor that will cause a jam in one of my students' firearms, so they know how to clear a jam as quickly as they possibly can because that time is not going to stop because your gun jammed. So I will simulate stuff in a firearm that will simulate a jam, and I would have to clear that jam as quickly as possible.
Is there a mental strategy that you use? Because I could imagine this being a high stress situation,
It's a
right?
high stress
Like
situation.
the
Yes.
clock is clicking.
Yeah.
We're talking about hundredth of a second here.
Yes.
Do you have like a mental strategy that you normally use if it jams? That okay, how to focus and just be as optimal, as efficient as possible to fix this problem.
The more I do the sport, the more things become second nature for me. So in the beginning, when I had a jam, I would pause, I would stop. I'm like, why isn't my gun working? And then I would have to assess that problem. After assessing, I would have to fix that problem. That took multiple seconds in the beginning of my shooting career. And I'm like, wow, I just lost that stage all because of one jam. And then the more training I got, the more I practiced clearing jams and malfunctions. I can hear a jam before the jam actually happens. And it's like, I will now assess that problem as quickly as possible. I would tap the gun, rack it, and get back in the fight within fractions of a second and continue to move on because every gun has its own distinctive sound. The way the gun fires, the way the gun recoils. If there's what's called a squib in my line of practice, a squib is a gun that doesn't have enough gunpowder, and the bullet is now stuck in the barrel of the gun. That has a distinctive sound. My gun closing on a chamber that does not have a bullet in it has a distinctive sound than if there was a bullet in there. So if my gun closes and there's no bullet, when I pull that trigger, nothing's going to happen. So that specific sound is distinct to my ear that I know if my gun chambers and there's no bullet in there, I know I need to reload quickly and get back into that fight. So
That's incredible.
it's
That's
yeah,
like you practice so much that, and you stimulated these situations so much that it's
just
like
the
it's
sound.
a part of you. It's
Yeah,
like a part of you. It's
yeah,
almost like just like, you're brushing your teeth in the dark. You don't
right,
really have to really know because you
right.
just done
It's
it so many times, right?
exactly. Now handling stress on a match, I have a regiment,
Okay.
and it's a very I guess in the shooting world, it's an unconventional regimen. I pray every stage. At every stage, before my stage preparation, I will have a small prayer, and then I will continue on what I have as a shooting preparation of, if it's a handgun competition, I unholstering my gun, putting my magazine in, racking it, and doing the steps I need to do to prepare to shoot in that stage. but I always start every stage with a prayer.
Is it like
And
a positive affirmation?
yeah,
prayer?
it's more of a calms me down. It puts me in a very happy place. You know, no stress, no matter what the level of competition. If it's a local match or it's a nationals match, it just calms me down and puts me into a nice, calm state of mind where I could just conquer anything that comes across. So I start off with a prayer, and then I go into my traditional shooting routine of preparing my gun. So yeah, it's weird. It just
No, no.
it does not allow me to get stressed. And another thing is I don't let a bad stage affect me. Where I've seen phenomenal top shooters have a bad stage, let it fester, and give themselves a mental breakdown, and they can't compete the next stage, or they compete very poorly because their mind is at the previous mistake at the last stage. Or at worst case scenarios, have a complete mental breakdown and just say, I can't finish this match and give up. And that's like the biggest problem is how do you overcome a bad stage? Let's say that a stage your gun jammed and you cleared the jam as quickly as you can, but that fraction of a second might have costed you that match. And I just don't let it bother me. I'm like, I will let whatever happened at that previous stage happen, and I move on to the next stage as it's a brand new day, and not let it affect me. If you let a bad stage affect you, it could ruin your whole day. And I've seen some mediocre shooters that will not let a bad stage affect them, and then they get higher in the rankings because they didn't let something bother them and then pushed forward, or maybe even pushed themselves to go faster, quicker, and get more accurate because they knew they had a bad stage. So they let that as a motivation to become to shoot the next stage maybe quicker, faster, and it worked out for them. So don't let that stress bother you.
Absolutely. It seems like, living in a past failure kind of self-prophesize that failure into their life now, and even
Yes.
to project it into the future, because essentially it's just, I messed up on a stage and I'm not even gonna, again, pave my way to a better future at this
Right.
point. I'm just gonna even give up. It sounds like,
Sure. And that kind of says a lot of things about the person himself. Well, what happens if you come across a challenging aspect in your life? Do you just give up and walk away, or do you just fight through it and strive to be better at the next time you have that opportunity? So it's kind of like life lessons. Do you let it affect you, or do you push forward and strive to be better?
Yeah, do you think that it could be something like maybe faith in your, or confidence in yourself, or just, I just want to get your thoughts on this. Like, what do you think, as far as competitive shooting, what do you think the higher level competitive shooters utilize to kind of let that past mistake go and just continue to move forward? Is it just like kind of like, all right, I've had great days and I'm gonna have bad days, and kind of just acknowledging that? I don't know. I'm just, again, making this stuff up.
Well, I'm sure not everybody started off with not letting them bother them.
Sure.
And they've realized, I guess, what's the difference between a good shooter and a great shooter? You learn from your mistakes. So, if you let that one stage bother you and it affected you so badly you couldn't compete or couldn't finish the match, you learned that letting something like that bother you and affecting your next stage, you can't compete at a higher level. And now taking that into consideration, like, well, what did I do wrong that didn't allow me to progress into that next stage? Well, I let that bad stage affect me so much I couldn't finish, or it mentally handicapped me to the next stage that I wasn't even thinking of the stage that I'm currently at. I'm still thinking of the mistakes that I made previously. And what makes you a better shooter? Realizing that does affect you. Let it not affect the next stage, and treat the next stage as a brand new stage. And I guess learning from your mistakes and changing them for your future makes a good shooter into a better shooter.
100%. And it sounds like, again, just learning, I guess the microseconds that you're kind of
Yes.
learning from that mistake and adjusting, right? Almost like same thing when you're adjusting your pistol if it's jammed.
Yeah.
You're learning from it and like not letting it happen again, and
Right.
making the most out of it. Because it's like, I guess that's probably, maybe to sum it up, it's like Because Michael Jordan would take that negativity and, as you were mentioning before, like with the mediocre
Yeah.
shooter, drive them to be
Drive them
even
to be,
better,
yes,
even better
absolutely.
shooters. But I
Some
guess
people
it's
need that motivation, and why not let a negative situation be a positive drive?
so. Would you say that this is something that your competitive shooting experience helps shape your mindset nowadays with
I'm sure it
with work,
has.
with your personal life?
Yeah.
How so?
I I'm gonna tell you something that because you know me on a personal level,
Yeah.
I was a very shy person.
Really? No way,
Yes,
Tommy.
yes. I'd be the kid in the corner that would hang out and just not want to be seen. And now I'm like the life of the party. Like, I do a lot of public speaking. I teach a lot of lessons as a firearm instructor. At the range, they utilize my voice because I get to be very, very loud. And when, people are shooting guns, they can hear me over gunfire, it's changed my outlook on myself. I've built a lot more confidence. I've built a different outlook in life, where things that were not achievable are actually achievable. I'm like, well, why can't something else be achievable? And look at a higher star to try to reach and grab. And having that confidence kind of stemmed on, I was just a Joe Nobody picking up my gun for the first time. And now, people are coming up to me looking for advice and having me be their inspiration of being a better shooter. So it's, why not reach for higher goals?
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think, a lot of successful people have that characteristic also. It's like they're successful at a high level at one thing, and it's like, hey, it's like almost you got bit by the bug.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I can be this high level here. Let me, be high level everything that I do.
Sure.
Right? And it's, that's amazing. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
What would you say is a piece of advice that you can have for somebody that is, say, they're dabbing into the possibility of getting into competitive shooting?
Okay.
Do you have any piece of advice that you would suggest for them to follow?
Well, it depends. If it's a thought in their head, the advice I would say is come out and do it. If you go to USPSA.org's website, no matter where you live in the United States, you put your zip code, they will show you the closest match in your vicinity. Go to a match, introduce yourself. The most nicest people I've ever met have been at a shooting range. There's been a time that I was traveling to another match and I forgot my gun bag. Like, literally everything. And I had one guy lend me their gun. I had another person lend me a holster. Another person lend me a belt. By the time 7 people came up to me, I had a gun, a belt, a holster, magazine pouches, magazines. Some guy was nice enough. He's like, here, take some bullets. And I'm like, well, how much do you want for the bullets? He's like, no, just compete and have fun. So I was like, I forgot my gun bag, and I literally have everything I need to compete in this competition because everybody just gave a little piece of what they had that was extra. And I ended up competing. And so the nicest people that will give the shirt off their back, I've met at a shooting range. So go out, introduce yourself, get into the sport. You'll love it. So that's the advice I would give to a person that is considering coming out to shoot. The advice I would give to somebody who is currently a new shooter is, stick with it and practice and, seek help. Like find a good firearms instructor, take classes, take lessons. You'll always learn something that will benefit you. So yeah.
Is that something that you would say, if you had a ability to travel back 22 years
Yes.
and tell yourself something, like a secret
Yeah.
sauce to
Yeah.
give to yourself, would that be what
That
you're
would be
telling?
definitely one of them. I think my pride got ahead of me for a while that I was like, well, I know how to shoot. The Marine Corps taught me how to shoot. I don't need anybody else to teach me how to physically shoot. Well, it's shooting a gun and shooting a gun in competitions are way two different things.
Right.
And I needed a firearms instructor who was in competition that could teach me different nuances to shave seconds or fractions of seconds off my time. So, yeah, I wish I could have told myself years prior, just shut up, put your pride aside, take a couple of lessons from better people than you, and you'll learn much quicker. And I would have saved a lot of ammo.
Would you say that all shooting schools are not the same, or
All shooting schools are not the same.
right? Depending on
Yes.
it, really depends on the level of instructor that's
Yes.
teaching it.
Actually, that's a very good question. Somebody told me, he's like, well, what inspired you to be a firearm instructor? I says, well, I went to a lot of different classes with some phenomenal instructors. And even though they're phenomenal instructors, I might have not just taken their whole lesson plan because it's their lesson plan, but I took the best thing out of their lesson plan. I said, well, I'm going to take a slice out of his lesson plan that I really love, that inspired me to be a better shooter in one aspect. And another instructor, I would take their little slice that really inspired me. So I took a lot of inspiration from a lot of different firearms instructors that I've taken classes with to become a good instructor myself. And I don't think I'm the best instructor. I think cater to what I've gone through and what I can teach. I teach a pretty good lesson, and people that I've taught have turned out to be champions in the sport. So I think I'm doing something right. But it's and everybody's level of being an instructor, even if it's a bad instructor, you're gonna learn something. Even from a mediocre instructor, you're gonna learn something out of it that you didn't know prior, and take that little inspiration that you've gotten from even a bad instructor, and turn it into a goal that you're being a better shooter or a better person. I had this one instructor that I didn't learn much about shooting, but it was more about self-confidence. And that's another, key component of shooting. If you're not confident in yourself and your skill of shooting, you're already behind the eight ball, so to speak. So
Wow, you've unloaded, pun intended, haha. You've unloaded so much wisdom in everything that you just said. Like it's very, it's like I wish I want to try to unpack this. Hopefully, I can do this justice because as because I'm a certified public school teacher as well. So
Okay.
it's like I can understand that not all teachers are cut from the same cloth. I kind of all
No.
envision teachers, as an umbrella encompassing term. Okay, this is a teacher. They're gonna teach me what I need to know, and then no, it's not true.
No.
Like no, not all teachers are cut from the same cloth. They're
course
not
not.
all the same, and it's like a two-way street too in teaching. And I want to say that I would suspect that your secret sauce to being a successful instructor is your amazing personality, because I know you on a personal level, and you're just like the warmest, most accommodating, most perceptive person to be a teacher. Like I would definitely envision why you're successful as a teacher, because it's not just about teacher centric. This is what I'm teaching you. You either get it or you don't.
Right.
It's kind of understanding the student, how they function, and kind of accommodating to
Sure.
their need. And I find like the best teachers are the ones that take that extra step to understand the student, so that the student can get to success. So there's a level of social work involved
course.
too, because it's like you're kind of understanding their background and kind of building that rapport.
Right.
And you have these characteristics. I can totally understand why.
The good thing about how I teach is, if you're local to Long Island where I shoot, my student could also be my competitor as well, right? So as my competitor, I can see his faults. So when he's running through that, or she is running through that course of fire, I'm like, okay, well, I taught you this, and you're not taking that into consideration during this stage. So I'm like, the next time we have a lesson, I'm like, well, we need to reiterate some of the things that we have gone over, or maybe incorporate some new techniques of learning. Because I've realized, especially when it comes to teaching shooting, there's going to be a 30% retaining of information, because let's be real, there's a lot of information coming out during a short period of time, and then you're physically shooting guns and trying to incorporate shooting a firearm while running through an obstacle course and trying to retain the information your instructor just told you.
And you're tired.
Yeah,
and you're like
it's a
breathing
lot.
hard.
It's a lot of information. So I understand that 30% is going to get retained, and I know that I will be brushing up on previous lessons on my future lessons, so it could be concreted into your memory. But now I also, being my competitor, I could see, are they putting what I'm teaching them into practice, or are they not? And what do we got to teach at our next lesson for it to help you? So having them, compete with me, I could see their faults, so it's beneficial that I see my students even in competition and see if they're actually learning what I'm teaching them or they're not. So, and it's a proud moment when my actual student beats me in a competition, because
awesome,
that's
in a way.
the biggest compliment you could give me.
Yeah.
You've learned everything that I'm teaching you, and you took it to the next level to the point you've beat your own instructor. I'm like, that's the biggest compliment I can receive.
That's the highest level
Yes.
of instruction.
Yes.
And they're thinking out of the box, taking what you know, and then incorporating some other factors into it. And now it's like they figure something new out.
Yes.
Right? That's just like, again, another jewel of wisdom that, can be marinated on. For
Of course.
sure.
And then that's when the teacher becomes a student. Like, what did you just learn, on your own from the things I've taught you or things that you've learned from somebody else that now you have a little piece of that secret sauce. Give me some of your sauce that you've learned so I could better myself as a competitive shooter as well as an instructor. So I never stop learning. And once you realize that you think you know it all, you're going to be behind the times.
You stop growing.
You stop growing.
And that's actually a teaching adage too in the teaching world, public school teaching world, where it's like teachers that kind of just every year is the same exact curriculum. They're not following the trends of technology and society and culture. And maybe at one time they were the best teachers, but then they kind of become not so good.
Right. You have to learn to roll with the times and learn and continue to learn.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's like in martial arts, because I did train karate.
Oh, nice.
In martial arts, when you hit your black belt, it's like you learn, like, hey, you learn more when you teach, and you kind of summarized it right there.
Yeah.
Why you're learning more when you teach, because it's like, okay, maybe your student maybe throwing a punch better than you. It's like, why?
Sure. Right.
And it's like you never stop growing and learning. It's beautiful.
And another thing I love about teaching is there'll be times that I had a really good lesson plan in my head, and I used to incorporate it in my own routine all the time, and I just shied away from it. And teaching kind of reminds me, it's like, oh, that's right, I'm teaching this, and I stopped incorporating it in my own life. I need to reincorporate it in my life, and by teaching it, kind of is a reminder of, oh, this is what you're teaching. You should practice what you preach, and you should do it yourself. So sometimes me teaching somebody is a constant reminder of things that I need to do, to continue to better myself.
Do you ever get afraid during competition?
Do I ever get afraid? No. I don't think fear has anything.
Fear of losing? Or fear?
No. I'm going to tell you the best advice I got was from a loved one. They told me, when the sport stops being fun, I don't care how much you get paid, stop doing it. It's like, because you look alive when you're shooting and you're teaching. You look, the biggest smiles on your face is when you're at the shooting range. So when it's not fun anymore, stop doing it. So being at the shooting range, teaching, competing, traveling in the competitions, that's my happy place. If I'm fearful there, that's a problem. So no, I'm not fear of losing. I'm not fear of danger. I'm not fear of, there's no fear at all. It's, it's always fun. It's always fun.
Wow, I love it. And this is, by the way, this episode is going to be season 2, episode 1.
Oh,
and
I'm the first.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say, like, the entire first season, after editing and just marinating on the interviews, and I really, really appreciate everything you just said right now, because it's consistent with successful people, that they are real with themselves and they are pursuing their passion and their dreams. And that's like where you're most optimal.
Right.
That you can be the most efficient at whatever you're doing, right? That you're going to go the extra mile, because it's not work. At
right.
this
It's
point.
not.
It's
no.
fun.
And when, it's a very the truest statement that you hear all the time is, if you do something that you love, as a job, you've never worked a day in your life. It's extremely true. Like if I would just shoot, compete, and teach every day of my life, I don't feel like I've ever worked a day in my life.
Yes. I love this,
Yeah.
and really I would love, people that are just competitors, whether you're a competitive shooter that's listening or just, competing in basketball or whatever. I love this episode because and I want to make this important point that, Tommy is not saying I'm just going to close my eyes and just, pursue my dream, which is fine,
Right.
but Tommy has a high standard for pursuing his dreams. It's not just like, you're randomly doing this. Like you do this right. It's
Right.
like you're aligning yourself with the right people. You're training, you're respecting the sport, and you're respecting the equipment that you use, right?
Absolutely. It's a
And
very dangerous equipment that I'm using.
absolutely. And you have this high level, high standard mentality. I would even theorize that might be a secret sauce that what makes successful people successful, pursuing their dreams, pursuing their passion, but then making sure that they keep it at a high standard, keeping themselves at a high standard, right?
Absolutely.
Because who really is at the same time, who really is bossing you around and breathing down your neck and telling you, you got to do this, you got to do that? Nobody, right? Yourself.
Myself, I'm actually my own worst critic. There'll be times that I would have shot a phenomenal stage and people are like, you did it the best, and you had the quickest time and the biggest score. And I looked and I replayed it in my head and I'm like, no, I could have done something a little better. I could have tweaked this to be a little faster, or so I am my own worst critic. That and that's what strives me to continue to be better and better and better. Like if I was completely satisfied with every performance I've done at a competition, I don't think there'd be a drive for me to shoot faster, better, or whatnot. If I'm my own worst critic and I could tweak here, I could go faster there, my reloads could have been a little smoother. That's my drive. Like being hard on myself is my drive that continues to go better, go faster, and
Yeah, and
having
you can only do that when you're doing something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're doing something that you hate and you don't,
you're
like,
not putting
you're
not
not-
even 10% effort, let alone 110.
there's nobody that's telling you
Right.
to improve because you don't care, right? Like
I don't care about this.
A
Right.
person would be like, I hate my job or whatever,
Right.
and it'd be like, okay, there's not gonna be that voice that'd be like, hey, you should do this better. It's like, no, I don't care.
I don't care.
Versus if you're really passionate about
Yes.
something, it's like,
You don't need anybody to be on top of you. You're pushing yourself. Even if you have a boss, for example. If you're in a position in life where you love what you do, you don't need a supervisor to push you or strive to be on top of you to do anything better, because you're doing it yourself. And that love for whatever you do is going to give you that energy to push yourself to be the best in whatever field you do, not just shooting, anything in life.
wow, Tommy, I honestly, that's a mic drop moment. I think that's that. I don't know how better to end this. But Tommy, what are you up to now?
What am I up to now? I have more students that I'm training.
Awesome.
I'm got more competitions. It's the height of my season, so there's a lot more traveling to do. More fun times with the family, because that kind of gets in the way of life of competing and whatnot. I have a lovely 8-year-old son that wants my attention as much as my competitions do. I am very fortunate that I do get to compete in out-of-state matches with my niece and also my goddaughter. So I get to spend a lot of quality time with her and seeing her grow up in the sport and seeing her becoming a beautiful woman in what they say is a male-dominated sport.
Wow.
So I mean, it's just I have a lot on my plate, and we just make it work.
Yeah.
Just to make sure everything is getting done.
Yeah, but the beauty of it again, you're not working.
No,
It's something that you're
exactly.
passionate
It's
about,
like
so it's
I could be
mile.
doing this, all day long, every day. If I was getting paid or not. Thank you for my sponsors for helping me, make my dreams come true and taking care of it. But yeah, it's a dream that wouldn't be a reality if it wasn't for everybody in my life. And I do belong to a team. It's called Team Infidel, and it's based out of Long Island. But we have Team Infidel members all over the world. And my team is actually a very big inspiration. You know, sometimes where I need some pick me up. You know, I need an inspirational quote. You know, in the middle of a match. You know, my team is there to help me out in every aspect, any aspect. So I do appreciate having that team as a backbone for for my competition, because it's family. You know, when it comes down to it, I don't look at them as teammates. I look at them as family members.
That's important.
Yeah.
So, definitely shout out to Team Infidel.
Yes, love Team
I'll
Infidel.
include them in the link.
Thank you.
Please follow Tommy. What's your Instagram handle?
Tommy USPSA.
Yes, follow Tommy, please.
Yes.
He's an incredible human being. Support him. I'll include that link down there. Also, seek him out. He's an amazing instructor. And Tommy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's an absolute honor.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I love this episode. This is gonna be like, there's a lot of jewels. And Tommy, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it, brother.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Jing's Mortgage Team. Jing's Mortgage Team is a team of real estate and mortgage professionals whose mission is to help anyone with their real estate needs. If you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, refinance your home, have credit issues, or in need of an investment loan, we can definitely help you. If you're looking for a real estate agent, we know the best of the best real estate agents. Visit the link below for more information.